What is Intel facing? The CEO got pressure to be fired, but there is bigger problem. There's a lot of news covering like Trump's calling for Intel boss to resign immediately. So they're finding out. Actually, they already know like Intel CEO. So he's a Malaysian. He's a very big name in semiconductor industry. So he's previously one of the Intel personnel. So what happened is they have found out Intel CEO have very close tie to some of the Chinese company, and this Chinese company is very closely linked to Chinese Communist Party. So in other words, he is very close to China. Trump is very annoyed with this issue. Trump doesn't like anything that relate to China or too closely to China, especially in semicon or chip industry. So in this regard, they have to ask Intel CEO to be fired. And to more specifically, if you just look at the senator writing a letter to Trump, right? Reuters have more insightful numbers lah. So Reuters has identified there's 20 investment from Tamlitbu, which the firm name called Warden. There's a joint owner from all these Chinese government fund that has a lot of investment into Chinese company. Trump definitely doesn't like this. So in this regard, Intel got to find another CEO or have Tamlitbu to sell away all these Chinese company. So there's only these two resolutions. So what do you think? Would Intel find another CEO or sell away all these Chinese investment? Actually, it's not option one, it's not option two. Actually, the biggest problem is really the option three, which is Intel have a bigger issue, which is they have not been solving their sales issue. In other words, they have product issues. Even if find another CEO, I don't think they can solve Intel issue right now because they really have product issue, they have team structure issues, they couldn't find their star product right now. Option three, try their best to make Trump happy.
Thank you, fellas.
I think the bigger problem right here is this. They really have sales problem, they have product problem. Second thing that I want to share tonight is we thought Nvidia is being allowed to sell to China, which is announced earlier. And turns out that Trump won a pie of the top line revenue. And after I found out, I thought this is just a pinch of salt for Nvidia. And I'll share with you what I think and why I think it's just a pinch of salt. So the news right here, right? Nvidia and AMD 15% of their chip revenue. But what I watched on the news out there, I think right now the face is Jensen Huang, which is Nvidia. AMD is just following behind. So earlier, Nvidia has already got green light from Trump or even the US government to sell not so advanced chip to the Chinese. So we thought, hey, good news for Nvidia. And Nvidia right now can increase their revenue to sell to China. But the problem is, even if they allow them to sell to China, they need to take 15% cut. And initially, Trump won 20. But I think maybe Jensen Wang have the skill to negotiate with Trump. I guess it's hard to negotiate, but I don't know how he negotiate. He negotiate 15%. So imagine top line 15%. US don't need to do anything. Whatever you sell China, I just take 15%. Wow. I thought Trump is really, is it called, in Chinese called 狮子开大口, which is the lion open mouth very big. They just want to take a lion bite on, but let's see further. I think actually this is just a pinch of salt for Nvidia at this current stage. But before that, actually Nvidia, after they please Trump, right, they also need to please the Chinese government. Why? Because right now, let's say Nvidia represent US, right? Imagine right now your chip is produced by US government per se, and right now US have control on all these chips. Chinese government also worried that their data will got linked to this US government. Yeah, so I think they are just playing this mind game lah. But let's say if they are okay with all this product is product, there's no hanky-panky behind. Let's look at why I think it's just a pinch of salt. Assume right now, the China market, if you look at revenue by geographical, right now it's at around 20 billion. So US, they have 100, and Nvidia, they have close to 150 billion revenue. 20 billion is from China. So 20 divided by 148 is just around 13%, 13%. So right now, China just stand a very small percentage in terms of like their total revenue. So even just taking 13%, right? And then we just take 15%, right? It's just 2% of revenue at the current 2%. So I think at this current moment, it's really just a pinch of salt. And right now, what they are looking at is actually getting a bigger pie or bigger revenue from China. So even though they have to pay 15% tariff or tax or whatever they call it to US government, if they can simply double their revenue from like the China region, so 20 billion to 40 billion, it actually is a big push on their revenue growth. Right? So I think at the current stage, let's say Nvidia like to grow their so-called chip sales, right? It's better to grow in terms of hardware, so-called like in entrance, maybe give up some of the profit margin, and in the end they can capture the bigger part of the world to adopting their chip and maybe their software. Yeah. Because yes, Nvidia is selling their hardware, but they're also pushing out their software at the same time. But they are not selling software at the moment. So hardware is their revenue generator. So let's say if software could capture the bigger market, maybe software revenue would be their continuation of their revenue. And let's look at Nvidia. If really all their revenue is from China, are they afford to pay this 15%? So if you look at this net profit margin, right, at this current moment, 50% profit margin. So by 50%, just taking away this, like maybe 15 to 20%, they can still make 20-30% of profit margin. So what they need to do right now is really to maintain their profit margin at this current moment, and then maybe share a bit of profit to US government, just to get entry to the China market, just to please both sides of the world. So if you look at their US revenue, it's still growing. Let's talk about the lesser looked after brother or even sister, which is AMD. So AMD, if they got slapped by this 15% tariff, right? Actually, for AMD, right, they sell more of their chips to China. So if you look at this 6 billion upon this 25 billion, right? So if I know, it's close to 25%. So they have 25%. So it's double in terms of percentage compared to Nvidia. So at the current moment, so 20%. So 25% got taxed like 15%. Okay. But the moral of the story right here is they have to grow faster in China. But does it mean that it's a two pinch of salt for AMD? What I thought is a bit different. Because right now, if you look at AMD, right, their profit margin is still very thin. So 15% is big portion in terms of their like business life. So I think for MD is like a kind of more difficult situation. So they really have to grow much more into China revenue so that they can get economic skills, and even they got that 15%, the net profit margin still able to sustain that. So let's wrap up for this second piece of news, which is we thought Nvidia selling to China is a good thing, is a win, but Trump slapped with 15% tariff. I think for Nvidia is a pinch of salt, because if they can still grow with their healthy profit margin, they can grow far more better in China. Yeah. So I believe Nvidia is in a better positions compared to AMD.
So if you haven't followed me on YouTube, just search Google channel, subscribe, follow, hit like. Thanks again for all your support. I hope all these sessions give you clarity, give you enough turbulent management, so for us to continue to keep healthy, keep happy, and hot in the market. Thank you, everyone. I will see you next week. Bye bye.